Thank you, Mr. Brownstone. I'd like to call the February 7th meeting of the Middletown Board of Education to order. Will you please stand for the flag salute and remain standing for some moments of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have a number of moments of silence this evening. We've been pretty hard hit, our Mitty family, during the past couple of weeks. I'm going to start off with a quote from Dr. Donna Shalala, who was the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Clinton, presently a U.S. Representative from Florida, the 27th Congressional District. I find the death of a young person the most difficult and painful of times. To explain it to other young people, to see a bright future snuffed out, is just awful. I am haunted by those deaths. One of our young people, a student at Middletown High School, Joseph Jessup, passed on February 1st after a battle with cancer for 17 long years. He just turned 18 years old. Joseph, the son of Joseph F. Jessup, Jr. and Barbara Reinhardt, was a loving, outgoing person, graduate of Middletown High School in Orange County, Boces. He was a Lego master builder, which was his greatest passion. Along with loving his mother, they were inseparable. He enjoyed riding his golf cart, quads, and swimming. He provided tremendous joy to all of his family, friends, schoolmates, everywhere he met. Frank Glickman, one of our instructors in high school, said, "Joe made people feel special and beautiful." Tracy Sorrentino, principal at the high school, and some of his C-Tech teachers comments, Joseph Jessup had the most infectious smile. He loved to make people laugh and always had a funny joke to tell. When you would see Joe in the hall, you would get a hello, a smile, and often a hug. He was a friend of everyone. He loved his cowboy boots and building creative Lego creations. Next moment of silence this evening, Flora Estelle McVeigh Pennell passed away January 20th, 1945, graduate of MHS, one of the first classes to spend the entire 4 years in the new high school, the Pope New High School, on Grand Avenue, which of course now is Twin Towers. Member of the band and choir, but also got involved in the school newspaper. Miss Pennell taught art in Truman Moon Elementary School, as well as being a guidance counselor for Pine Bush and Circleville School District. Her husband, Dalton Pennell, known as Penny, taught English at SUNY Orange, and I had Penny Pennell for English, very dedicated individual. Miss Pennell had many interests in her life, including quilting, crocheting for children, and painting. Most of all, she was a woman with a heart of gold who changed the lives of everyone she met in one way or another. Flora took great pride in her family and had a great love for all her grandchildren. The next moment of silence, Mary Cavanaugh, the aunt of Assistant Superintendent for Instructions, Amy Creedon, passed away January 23rd. Ms. Cavanaugh served her community as a member of the Washingtonville High School and Monroe-Woodbury High School special education staff. During her life, Mary enjoyed many things, including camping, cruising, and just sitting on the beach at Montauk. In recent years, she enjoyed playing bridge, mahjong, and her time with the ladies at the book club. Most of all, she enjoyed spending time with family and friends. Dean Ouderkirk, passed away on January 27th. Past athletic director for Middletown High School. Dean, and I work with Dean on committees. He had an unconditional love and pride for Middletown High, Middletown sports and its students. He was fiercely loyal and protective of our students and school. He coined the term Midi Pride, which has stuck all these years. In 2000, he won the inaugural William Moran Award, named in honor of the former Section 9 administrator, in recognition of a local athletic administrator who demonstrates leadership and integrity. Like Mr. Moran, Dean's defining purpose always circled back to what was best for the kids. He became athletic director in Middletown in 1979. He was instrumental in the renovation of what would now is named Fowler Field. Section 9 representative, when the New York State Public High School Administrators Association was formed, he was always involved because he wanted to be on the cutting edge of what was happening so that Middletown could benefit. And believe me, Dean Outercook was a true gentleman and an optimist. You asked him about things and his comment was, "It's super." I can't say enough good things about Dean. Continuing on, I told you it was a tough week, 2 weeks. Lena J. Citronelli, passed away January 28th. Citroniti family has a long relationship with this district. Lena's son Dominic is a member of our buildings and ground staff. Rosanna, Lena's daughter, is a member of the district clerical staff. Lena's niece, Frank Glickman, is a respected member of the Middletown High School Special Education Department. Family was very important to Lena. She was particularly proud of the accomplishments of her grandchildren. In her leisure time, Lena loved to cook, cruise, sing, karaoke, and play bingo. The final moment of silence is for Justina Abilis. Justina Abilis, the grandmother of Anthony Williams, and Anthony Williams is a dean at Middletown High School, passed away on January 26. Justina loved her family. She enjoyed being a mother and a wife. When she walked into the room, her presence was felt. She was happy, loud, caring, dancing, singing, all of those things happening at once. It was her love of all, her caring ways, her beautiful, bright smile, her loud voice, her fun energy, her fearless, daring ways that brought joy to everyone. These are the things that impacted everyone who knew her. A tough lady. She never allowed her sickness to define who she was. In spite of her difficulties, she insisted on attending Christ Church and loved the new family church. She continued to sing, dance, cook, and be happy until the end. She remained proud and tough and spent her last days saying whatever she wanted. So please remember all these people, all these individuals who were either members of the district or relatives to members of the district in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you so very much. You may all be seated. Pastor Williams, you're going to do the mission statement this evening, I believe.
I guess so. Yeah, I gotta get my glasses because I can't see. Here we go. I had to put on my glasses, otherwise we wouldn't be able to read this. Mission of the Enlarged City School District of Middletown. We strive to provide fiscally sound educational opportunities in a safe environment that continuously supports our diverse student population. We will enable all students to graduate, to reach their full potential, to become lifelong learners, and to be competitive, productive members of society.
Thank you so much, Bishop Williams. Mrs. Clark, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Lasnier?
Here.
Mr. Carino?
Here.
Mr. Pierre? Ms. Tobiasen?
Here.
Pastor Williams?
Here.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Clark. Just one brief announcement. Mrs. Clark is doing her usual efficient job. She has the board petitions ready. If anyone would like to run for the Middletown Board of Education, you may pick the petitions up in Mrs. Clark's office. And you may also call her at 326-1196 just to see if she happens to be in, which she most generally is at the time. So again, board petitions are ready. We have 3 seats up this year. Bishop Williams, Mr. Crescenzo, and Mrs. Tobiasen. Let's go to the approval of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the regular minutes, January 17, 2019, meeting of the Middletown Board of Education.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Personnel action items. If there's no objection, I'd like to call for the approval of 16A instructional and 16B non-instructional. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And for the people who are maybe new to the meeting, we have all this backup material at least a week before. So we discuss this, we ask questions to the administration, and so on. So we don't just approve without knowing what we're approving. We do know, believe me. We have introduction of personnel this evening. Mrs. Creedon?
Yes, we do. We have Mrs. Sorrentino and Mr. Connell here to enthusiastically introduce their new teacher. Welcome.
Good evening, President Perino, Mr. Del Moro, members of the board. It is with great pleasure and honor that we welcome Ms. Xenia Santana to our Middletown High School faculty. We lucked out, can't say I didn't know. Just teasing. Ms. Santana comes to us with experience. She's a biology teacher with also a TESOL certification to work with our English as new learner, English as a new language students, in addition to a bilingual extension on her certification. She also comes to us with experience in working with authentic data from medical projects, as that is something she had completed with her students in her former district. We are very lucky to have her due to a relocation. She is moving to the Hudson Valley and wanted to be closer to her home. So please join us in welcoming Xenia.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be a part of Middletown, and I heard that the slogan is the Middies, right? So Midi Pride, right? I got a tip from a friend of mine that graduated from here. She said it was a great place to be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Reports. Thank you, Bishop. On to recognitions, announcements, and community reports. One of our members of our staff, Mr. Thomas Scott, Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds, will be receiving an award this evening from Mr. Paul Rooney, President of the New York School Facilities Association. Would you like to come on up? And Tom and Doreen Scott is here also, former member of the district. This is a well-deserved award.
Good evening, President Perino and members of the board. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present this award. As the President said, my name is Paul Rooney. I am the Director of Facilities at North Rockland School District down in Rockland County. I am also the President of the New York State School Facilities Association. So one of our certificates that we do in our accreditation program is our Certified Director of Facilities. We refer to it as our CDF. We've had it for approximately 20 years. And there's a select few of facilities directors through our 500-member association that have attained this certification. One of them is Thomas Scott. So I'm here tonight to present this to Thomas Scott, RA, and the CDF certificate for his recertification, which we do every 5 years, to keep our members current and have them run your facilities as efficient as they can. This is done through earning credits and training throughout the year, attending the conference, and there's a peer review group that approves this or denies it. So I'd like to present Thomas Scott with the certificate tonight.
Tom, go ahead.
Man, a few words, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Let's do a picture. Let's do a picture.
Let's get a picture with Tom.
And Mr. Rooney.
Mr. Rooney, come on.
Mr.
We're
Rooney,
going to take a photo op here.
members of the board, come on up.
Right.
You know what is not said here, Tom is a very modest person, but believe me, the buildings would not be in such fine shape today if it wasn't for Tom Scott. He and Pete Wilcox just did a yeoman's work in the construction of Presidential Park, the building you're in now. So, excellent job. Fine working with all the staff members of the district. Very calm individual. Now, Doreen's, look, he's calm with us, Doreen. So, good job, Tom.
All the comments are about at
We
work.
appreciate you. Now we have another special recognition this evening, and I believe this is the first time in my memory we've ever done this, and that's the crossing guards of the Middletown School District. You see these individuals, they work in the winter, they work in the cold, they work in the rain. In the summer, when we have summer school, they're out there in the heat, making sure that our students remain safe. I can't say enough about how we really, really appreciate you all. I see you when I go by, I know one of the members of the Crossing Guards is a fellow veteran and member of Troop 151, American Legion 151. We have with us tonight also the various chiefs of the Middletown and Wallkill. Chief Iwanshu and Deputy Chief Spano are here. Would you like to introduce, come on up to the mic, and would you like to make introduction? Chief Iwanshu and Deputy Chief Spano, you can would you introduce other members of your staff that are here this evening?
Good evening. Thank you for having this recognition. As you said, Mr. Perino, this is the first that I'm aware of as well, and I think it's definitely well deserved. I think you hit on something real quick in your words there, is that the members of the Crossing Guards, they are special people. They take time out of their day in and day out, to come out and provide the safe avenues to the students to allow them to go to and from the school on a daily basis. And as you said, they do that in all types of weather, the inclement weather, hot, cold, rain, snow, they're out there. And we pass by them all the time, and too often we don't give them the recognition and honor that they deserve. So I think this is a great opportunity, and I thank you on behalf of the City of Middletown for recognizing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Spano.
Good evening. Thank you, members of the board. I truly echo the words of Chief Iwanshu. I appreciate you taking this evening to acknowledge the hard work that parking officer Melanie and Officer Cruz and Officer Meslanka and Officer Bennett in the back, taking the time to honor them, because they do great jobs out there. So thank you very much.
If you like, we'd like all the individuals who we're going to recognize to go up in front near the podium, and we have a little a token of our appreciation for you. Bishop Williams would like to say something.
I want to speak as a parent and not as a board member, but as a parent. I have 3 children in the district, and 2 of them walk to school. One I drive to school every day. But I want to say that these individuals are here. They, every time that I drive past them or I see them, they greet us with a smile. They greet us, and they're doing their job so cheerfully. And so I personally, as a parent, want to applaud you and thank you for keeping all of our children safe. All of our children safe. Thank you for what you do, and continue. We hope that you continue for as long as you want to and as long as you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Williams. Would you like to call the names of the individuals, you and Chief Spano? You can divide them up or however you want to do it.
Joseph Kovac. Robert Warner. Louis Sherwood. Ernest Odell. Aurora Gonzalez. Sue Krantz.
Thank you.
William Bullock. Cal Wisher.
No, Goshen, 1961.
Okay. Thank you for your service. Robert Bennett. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. Yunara Cruz. Thomas Mashlanka. Melanie DiRamondo.
Thank you. We'd like to get a photo of you, everyone involved, so come on up here, and Kevin Witt's going to get a photo, Chief. Come on up, all the crossing guards, board members. Thank you all for being here. We're not insulted that you're leaving. We know you have other business to attend to.
Just keep your eyes and ears open.
Okay, now we'll go on with regular announcements, recognitions, announcements, and community reports. Why don't we start at the far end tonight with Mr. Gomez? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. This past week, it was announced that the New York State budget will include funding for stop-arm cameras and seatbelts for school buses. I personally think it's a great idea. I think which time has come. As I've stated previously, or as we've stated previously in our board meetings, each year, or every day actually, if I'm correct, over 1,000 incidents occur throughout New York State of vehicles or reckless drivers passing school buses as children, sometimes senior citizens, are boarding or unboarding. that's 1,000 casualties waiting to happen. And I am happy that the governor has included in the budget funds to launch these initiatives, which are already in place in other states. And believe that this comes to fruition with cooperation with our local police departments and school bus companies is something that could well save lives. So it is my hope it will come to fruition, but it doesn't stop there. As we know, for years, legislation has been introduced in the state assembly to raise the penalties for passing school buses, and they die in the committee. There's been a change in chairs in the state assembly, and I hope that the legislature will act and support this, which has broad bipartisan support. And I would say follow the lead the Middletown Common Council did under the great leadership of our former transportation chair, Kevin Witt, which got a resolution passed. And because at the end of the day, our children's safety matters. So I think these are good news, and I hope we can see it come to pass, and hopefully even within our district.
Thank you, and I know you're an advocate of this, and I want to thank you also, Mr. Gomez, for providing us with background information every so often. And I'm sure you'll deal with this also in your Fair Funding Committee.
Yes.
Mr. Lassonere?
Just wanted to say that I attended the graduation ceremony last night at the high school. 20 of our students attended to receive their diplomas, most of them early. They were scheduled to graduate in June of 2019, so I want to congratulate all of them. And I didn't get a chance to say while all of our wonderful crossing guards were here, in addition to working outside in the cold and in all weather, I drive by the intersection of Wickham and Wisner every morning and every evening, and that could quite possibly be one of the most deadly intersections in this district if it weren't for those people controlling traffic. It's just insane the way people drive through there, but they really keep it under control during those hours. So if you're going through there and that sign comes up, just pay attention, and they're just doing their job, and they're doing a really good job.
Thank you, Mr. Lassonere. Mr. Gritzendo also attended the high school graduation. I'm sure he would like to say a couple words about this also.
Another feel-good event in the district. There were 23 students that graduated, and 22 of them were early graduates. I mean, that's incredible. They're an entire semester early, so they can get whatever they're going to do, either go to OC or maybe they're in a college already, but just that jump start. But the feel-good part of it, not only was the excitement in every one of those students as they came up on the stage and received their diploma, but you look out in the audience, you can tell what parent belonged to what student, vice versa, just by the look on their face, the excitement, the cheering, the clapping. It was really, really a very, very impressive ceremony. And again, congratulations. That shows a tremendous amount of effort on everyone's part, the parents, the students, and the teachers to help them push through. So again, another feel-good event of the many that go on every so often in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, I wanted to thank Mrs. Blumenauer for making every attempt to attend the graduation, even leaving business early on Long Island. It's quite the drive, though. Mrs. Tobiasen, I know you would have been there, but you had a bit of a medical emergency in the family, so go ahead.
I just want to add my congratulations to the graduates, and I just also want to say that I know that all our buildings are preparing, or at least the middle school and the high school, for their plays, especially Monhegan with the Lion King. So I'm hoping that we'll get community support as we always have in the past. But and I think the recognition goes also to our students who have to give their time, the parents who are there for them, but also the advisors, because they certainly have to put many, many hours over and above the daily school day to bring on such a production. So I look forward to going to many of them this year.
Thank you, Mrs. Tobiasen. And Bishop Williams attended the graduation also?
Absolutely. I add my congratulations. That's always one of my favorite events that we have in the district because it does show the perseverance of these particular students, whether they're graduating early or whether they are continuing to be persistent past the time that they were supposed to graduate. And so I applaud them, and last night I applaud the families and all of the teachers and administration that was involved in that process. Also, I don't have too much tonight, but I do, as a reminder that this is February. It is African American History Month, and there are going to be many events that are going to be going on in the community as well as in the district. Take time, if you can, to maybe attend one of these events or to read some of the rich African American history that many times has been forgotten or ignored over the years, but to understand that African Americans have played a very big, huge part in the history of this nation and of this world. And so I celebrate that. I'll be doing quite a few events over the course of this month, too many for me to name here, but you can go to my Facebook page and you can check them out and see what's going on. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on that, what some of our schools are doing.
Yes,
I covered Carter last week, and I'm going to continue this week. But, you know, the first thing I'd like to do, and I want to sort of change my thought process a minute. I want to extend, and I'm going to say our appreciation to the fire departments of Middletown, town of Wallkill, Silver Lake, Mechanicstown, and Pocatello for the wonderful service they provide for this district. Both the professional firefighters and the volunteers. They not only answer calls at any time of day or night, they conduct inspections of our buildings, and they provide us with programs in Fire Prevention Week. It's not easy being a professional fireman or a volunteer. I know Tom Scott is a volunteer. Excelsior's Hook and Ladder Company, which is also my company. Not fun, believe me, I know, getting up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't do that anymore. I'm active honorary now. I'm climbing those ladders, and you climb the ladders in the freezing cold, and especially if there's ice on those ladders. Believe me, it's a job, and they risk their lives. These emergency personnel, while people are going from the fires, they go toward the fires to do the best job they can. So I can't say enough about them. And likewise, the police departments of Middletown and Wallkill, I have heard nothing but good about the school resource officers this year. They not only add a layer of safety to the building, but they relate to the students in the building. And again, great service from both of these groups. Middletown and Wallkill, we have SROs from both agencies. So great job, and continue the good work. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going on with some of the events happening this month for Black History Month. Maple Hill, report from Aaron Anderson. Students will be reading and displaying books featuring distinguished authors, poets, musicians, and athletes. They will also be reading award-winning books, Coretta Scott King, which celebrates and promotes an understanding of the American dream. Adrian Deshawn, Presidential Park. Again, displays, read-alouds, working with the Chromebooks, creating a timeline of Dr. King's life, in addition to a number of other civil rights programs. And I will continue this. I'll just do one more. I want to continue with Presidential Park. The upstairs level, students will be reading and learning about Ruby Bridges, videos, books, and photos of American history. More to it than this, but I've said enough. I'll keep the coverage going next meeting. Thank you all who attended various events and for your input this evening. We come to the first opportunity to address the board, 4 minutes. Again, we don't die long. Any takers?
I'm going to speak before I say thank you for your kind words for fire and police. It comes at a very good time.
Thank you. Would you like to get up to the podium, Paul? All right.
We always like to hear from you, though, Dr. Johnson. Your words of wisdom.
All right. Anybody else? Any other takers? Any takers? Members of our staff? No? Okay. Letters this evening. No letters this evening. The next presentation, we're now knee-deep in our budget season, which always is a very interesting time, to say the least. And this evening, we will start with the administrative component of the budget with Assistant Superintendent Michael Tuttle.
Do I need to sign in? Right. Is this on? Yep. Good evening, Mr. Prino, members of the board, Superintendent Del Moro, Assistant Superintendent Creedon. As Mr. Prino said, this is the first of several nights we'll be discussing the 2019-2020 budget proposals. As you can see up top, tonight we'll be talking about the administrative piece. The next meeting we'll talk about instructional, and then we have capital and benefits. And then we'll talk about our favorite part, the revenue, where we get the money to fund all of our great instructional programming. The budget process starts usually right around October, but as I keep thinking, we're always planning. What's going on? Is that the light show? We're planning, 3, 4, 5 years from now, what our budget needs are. Who's got the lights? It's a motion sensor. So it's not just, we just don't put numbers on paper. We go through each category, looking at salaries, looking at curriculum, looking at needs of the district, looking at facilities, looking at athletics. There's a lot of things involved, looking at what the community and the schools really need. So tonight we begin with the administrative budget. Here's some assumptions, and some of these may seem familiar when Jeff Smith, our financial advisor, was in district a few meetings ago. Some of the things that we really know, our annual inflation is right around 2%. I think the CPI this year was 2.44%. The teacher's retirement system is at 9% this year, and the employee's retirement system will be right around 14.6%. And those are averages, and those are basically the percentages that we're responsible for teacher retirement and employee retirement systems. Boces, right around 5%. Our health insurance, have to be determined, but right now, our health insurance account is very healthy. We're seeing a substantial savings since we've gone self-funded. I think we're going into our third year of the self-funding. We've seen, actually our second year, we've seen no increases in co-pays, and we've seen actually a decrease in budget lines. But we'll talk about that when we get to the benefits portion of the budget. That's big. And just to talk about the health reserve insurance a little bit so you have a frame. Some of the other districts, they experienced a 17% and another 15% increase over the past 2 years where we've remained static. So that's very important when we get to that. Yeah, it's very good. Our foundation aid this year, just foundation aid is up 2.09%, and that's based on the governor's first runs in January. So that may adjust as the legislators, Senate and Assembly go through their renditions of the budget, and then hopefully in April when they come out with a budget, hopefully it's a little bit more. Historically, we've seen a little bit more foundation aid, and that's usually help us to offset the budget. Our community schools increased this year, 28.2%. That's a substantial amount where some districts receive no community schools, and actually the state minimum is going to 100,000. So every district that is eligible for a community school would minimally receive 100,000, where we would receive over 2 million this year. And the community schools is really focused on the poverty, your L's, and all your special needs that you have going on in the district. Just the estimated percent of the total budget, and what we're talking about tonight is the administrative. It's really estimated around 7% of the total piece of the pie. So it's really the smaller piece that we're dealing with tonight. But the administrative piece encompasses all the business functions, the treasurer, our auditors, the personnel department, curriculum, superintendent, assistant superintendents, and those things as such, the tax collector. I'm just trying to go down the list, but I'll show you in a second. So here's essentially overall where we are budget-wise. Each board member has the budget as is laid out by category and all the subcategories that make up this one number. So when you look at Board of Education up there, the budget for that, we've actually seen a little decrease. You know, we're looking at each line in the budget and looking where we can actually save some costs this year, as we do every year, but this year we're really tightening it down a little bit. So when you see this piece right here, this is taking all of the components that are involved to run, just say like the Board of Education, and we total them here, and we just do a year-to-year comparison showing that there's a change. Some of our, we're actually able to show some savings in some areas, like legal fees, central printing. And a lot of this is based on contractual things that we've done. We've gone out and maybe have received some better bids. We have some employee changes. We have maybe fewer litigation cases. So those are things that we're trying to predict a year from now. So, you know, we're looking at our best guess. So essentially we're taking our funds where we are now. We have a balance. And we say, okay, we haven't used all that, and are we going to use it for this year? And then what about next year? Are we going to use the same amount of money? So you're really trying to predict what you're going to do a year from now, and then hope you're pretty close. A lot of it is contractual, like I said, with salaries. So we know what the salaries are for employees. And again, this piece right here is the total is without benefits. So there's no health insurance in here. There's no Social Security taxes. There's no TRS or ERS associated with this budget here. We'll look at that in a few meetings. But essentially, this encompasses what I would call basically the operations of the business aspects of the district. So right here, and each board member has a packet, and it'll be online tomorrow or tonight. Maybe Karen's got it, or Kevin Witt will have it up there tomorrow morning. Essentially showing a line-by-line item this year. And what the federal government in New York State has come up with the ESSA reporting and legislation is we need to supply in August an itemized list of all of the funds that are distributed throughout the district. So for all the supply lines, furniture and equipment, we have to show it by building. We have to show what our salaries are by building. It's really the transparency movement by the federal government in New York State. So we're going to be very busy this summer with that. So just preparing, you may see some big discrepancies in those reports when we come out. And it's really not because we're not doing the same in every building. We just may have more experienced teachers in one building that's showing higher salaries versus another. We may have some different programs in a building. So we'll talk about that probably more May, June timeline when we start having to do some of that reporting. But I just want to make you aware it'll be actually in the news it'll be all over New York State. But I just want to start preparing that conversation with you. And it may come out fine. You know, we haven't really looked at that, what the equity of spending is, but we know we spend the same amount per pupil for supplies, furniture, equipment, library, technology, and those types of things. So overall, right now, this year, we're looking at a 3% increase in the administrative component, $480,410 increase over last year's budget. So what I'll show you next is our 5-year history. Last year, we had a 4.84% increase. So we've actually have come down a little bit. It's substantially lower than the last 5 years. So we're actually really peeling back each category and looking at where we're going to be able to be most cost effective in maintaining our programs. Basically looking at the tax cap, just a quick peek at it, we're in pretty good shape. We do have some of our fund balance and our reserves to help us offset this year's budget as well. Here's our budget calendar. The next one, February 21st, is our instructional. Then March 7th will be capital benefits. Revenue will be March 21st. Public input, which is very important. Community can come in. They can come in at any meeting and talk about the budget and put their thoughts on, which we actually recommend. We want to hear from you. April 25th is a budget adoption by the board. And then May 9th, we have a budget hearing. And then the most important date for us is May 21st for everyone to get out and vote. Again, this is really our first budget meeting where we're presenting the first piece of the budget. And over the next 2 months, we'll have a lot of conversation about where we need to be. And so this budget is the proposed budget, and it may be adjusted as we go. Some of the things that we don't know right now, for one instance, is the Boces administrative component and the capital and rent. That may change a little bit. But there's those things that come in at the 11th hour that we need to adjust. And that's it for the administrative piece.
Thank you.
You forgot the popcorn.
I'd like to go around, and we'll go around once with questions. Why don't we start with Mrs. Blumenauer? Go ahead, Paula. And we also can ask any questions during the week.
Sure.
Or during the upcoming weeks on this component of the budget. If you'd like to just take a look at it and write down any questions, I'm sure Mr. Tuttle would be very happy to answer them.
I think I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Tobiasen, you're always a good bean counter. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Perino, for your comments.
Compliment.
Thank you, Mike, for the budget.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that when we do put some of the salaries up there, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. There are many things, components to
Right.
that person or that department's salary.
Correct.
Not, that amount of money is not what's going
Correct.
to that particular person.
Right. So we had discussions about that today, and we actually changed a little bit of the verbiage and the detail. So if a line says salaries, there's more than one person in that line, and versus where it would say salary. And then you're correct, in some of our contracts, there's other benefits involved, and so we actually need to offset some of those costs in there, and that's.
And the other thing, I know that you put an estimate in for the Boces.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea, and I'm really putting you on the spot here, in the last few years, has it come in around 5 or has it come in a little less?
That piece has been a little bit less than 5. Usually when I say the 5 for Boces, it's with all the services, CTEC and special ed programs and those types of things. So we average it out, it's probably about 5. But this piece, 2 to 3%, if for good shape. And they're dealing with the same situation we are. They may have a lot of retirees that they need to pay health insurance, and their health insurance keeps going up. So we're offsetting their costs as well. Each district does that.
Thank you.
This table is long.
I saw in the paper that the governor is projecting a possible, I think it was a $2 billion
I think
deficit.
2.3 was the number. 2.3, I think, was the number.
2.3?
2.3 or 2.5,
Is-
yeah.
You know, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but is that a possibility? And if it is, how will that affect us?
At this point, I don't know. I think he's basically finger pointing at the federal government, saying you put these new tax laws in, and now we're seeing a reduction in our revenues. So, I'm sure they'll come up with some way to figure that out. But in their first runs, they've been pretty consistent. They're offering the same increase every year. And then they'll just hash it out over the next few months and say, this is what we have. I know they have new leaders up there, so they're very focused on education. So it may be positive for us. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if we'll get that, but they're trying to close the gap on it. What's that? Yeah, it's about 45 million right now. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have a slide for you in the next couple of presentations about that, where they are.
I
What
had
we're
asked
owed,
Mr.
where we are and what we're owed.
I had asked Mr. Tuttle if the mic wasn't on, that hopefully we'll get our fair share, which I thought was 40 million, but
Yeah, it's a little bit more
it's
than that.
45 million, so I know.
If you look at, in the next couple of meetings, I'll have a grid for you. You can see where it was, they were closing the gap, and then after an election year, it went right back down. So
Yeah,
it may come back up again.
not unusual.
No.
All right.
Don't hold your breath, John.
Right.
See, anything else, Mr. Crescendo? Mr. Lassonere?
I guess my question is, as we're looking over these, the numbers, there's some areas where we're seeing some substantial decreases in spending. You mentioned contract changes. Is it that we are foreseeing less of a need for the services, or are we forecasting, or is this just based on a contract?
Well, some of the things that we try to do, we're looking, we have retirements, we have grants coming in, we have, title funds. So we try to move some of those around to offset the costs, and that's where we're seeing, like administrative costs. So we have a significant retirement coming up, so that's going to save us a little bit of money.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Mr. Gomez is fighting the fight of unfunded mandates in his Fair Funding Committee.
You read my mind.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr. Gomez.
It's the question that I'm gonna be asking, God willing, for every for every area of the budget in the upcoming weeks. If you're able to answer today, what percentage of the expenditures for the proposed administrative budget at the end of the day goes into unfunded mandates?
And this one,
Yes.
there's not many. When we get in the instructional one, there'll probably be a little bit more. Yeah.
And you mentioned, and I'm pleased by the numbers here, the effort by the district to somehow minimize the need for legal fees. Now, I see that's a big contrast from, I see the change of less than a reduction of 32,000 from the 343,000 to 311,000.
Right.
If you could break down for me or for us, what kind of legal fees is the district entertaining to have to spend money on?
Well, there's
the different kinds.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. So we have the general counsel, we have labor counsel, we have special education counsel. So there's a lot of different things, depending on the year. If multiple contracts are due and we're negotiating quite often, the attorney costs could be a little bit higher. We deal with, I don't think there's a day where we're not talking to the attorneys about some situation, but we do have a retainer with them. Every year we sign a contract and we have a retainer with them, so those types of phone calls are included. It's above, so we have some other litigation coming up, right? Talk about that, and we don't know what the cost of that will be. So it's hard to predict a year from now what we need next January in legal fees. So we're looking at a multiple year budget trend, and then we say, okay, we can tweak this a little bit, and hopefully we're right.
And has litigation affected that expenditure significantly over the last?
I don't think so much litigation as much as going to hearings and things like that, and mediation and really contract talks and things like that.
I mean, I would just hope that in the future, that maybe the state legislature could explore, or maybe the county legislature, if it falls within their purview, the possibility of having the office, the county office of corp counsel, provide this to the extent possible legal services to different school districts, just like they take up the child protective cases for the DSS.
Right.
I believe that will save money for the school districts as a whole, and will streamline the kind of legal expenses they'll have. I mean, I think it's an idea worth hearing, and whether it be county legislative executive Newhouse or member of the legislature to look into it. But I think at the end of the day, the taxpayers will save money. And I just want to pick up where Mr. Crescenzo left off. I myself am very concerned about the announcement by Governor Cuomo of the $2.3 billion shortfall. And while the governor's pointing, as you noted, blaming the federal government, I think the state also has to look itself in the mirror when since this new legislature took office, they've been in a whirlwind of legislation, one bill after the other, which all promise to raise the expenses for the taxpayer. Right now, they passed legislation concerning college education, but at the same time, there is no attention has been given yet to address how our local urban small inner city school districts are shortchanged year after year, nor the grievance many taxpayers have about meeting with their kids' expenses or U.S.-born or citizens' expenses for college, other than we're giving you the bill to pay for everything else. So I just hope that the legislature will be fair in its commitment and promises that they're going to somehow reduce that gap. And I'm confident that our district, as always, will be prepared for whatever changes that the state announces, but it should not be at a detriment of our academics.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Gomez, and I'm sure your Fair Funding Committee is dealing, and I know you are, dealing with a number of these issues.
Yes, we are. One of the things we discussed is putting together resolutions urging the legislature to address the issue of inequality when it comes to expenditures, and to consider, I would say, hopefully, legislation to curb unfunded mandates. There are bills circulating in Albany. I mean, I think there have been one every session, but they never make it to the floor. And it would be nice if we could get maybe bipartisan support to finally, if it has some control, because I think that's the unfair albatross on taxpayers, small governments, school districts, and we need to take a stand to it. Otherwise, it's going to continue to bite us.
Good. Keep up the good work on that. Bishop Williams.
In respects to Mr. Crescenzo's questions, his comments, and also Mr. Gomez's comments, there's a lot to be concerned about as it relates to the budget, to the state budget. But also, I do want to make note that that for the last 2 years, as it relates to our foundation aid, and as it relates to the way we personally have been treated, we in Middletown, we've actually been very fortunate the last 2 years with the increases of our foundation aid. Mike, I have an idea, but what do we attest again? You mentioned it when in your presentation, but what do we attest again to the 28.2% increase in the community schools?
So a few years ago, the state came up. They have a formula based on the demographics in the school district, and essentially the L's, the English language learners, your special needs students, and just the community at whole and the wealth of the community. So we're seeing an increase every year when we submit our forms. We're seeing an increase in the L population, and so they have 6 criteria that we're supposed to focus on from community schools, and only those 6 you can really focus on spending the money. And that's what we've been doing with crisis interventionists and trying to help support all of the community needs in those areas. So psychologists and things like that.
Okay. That's good.
So as that grows, that means we have a population growing.
Right.
Right.
That's how I was kind of leaning at, is that we've got a population growth in this area, but it's not all just high income. It's not high income population growth.
No.
You know, and that's I think that's also a kind of a testament to our community as a whole, not just our school community, but our community as a whole, because people are seeing more opportunities that are arising in this area, not just from housing, but I believe that there's also been an increase as far as employment in different areas in this area. Maybe not as much as we'd like to see, but this is the community that many people want to move to. And so, I think that's a great statement to say, for us as a school community, but even with our municipalities, with Middletown and the town of Wallkill, what's going on. There are buildings, there are housing projects everywhere, and so I think that's good. This is pretty straightforward. As far as the administrative budget is concerned. I think where we always get sticky every year is when we start getting to the instructional. So
yeah, the next meeting. Yep.
Mr. Lassanier, welcome to your first budget season. You're coming in at a good point, because when I first came on, I was a deer caught in headlights. So you're coming in at a good point. So thank you, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Tuttle. Many of my colleagues raised points that I would have raised, and I will be looking very closely at each item during the week. As Bishop Williams said, this one is pretty straight forward.
Yeah, this is the
again,
smallest
thank
one
you.
for us. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No, in terms of just summarizing the first part of the meat of the budget process, and that is the administrative part and component of the budget. As Mr. Tuttle mentioned, there are many discussions that go into each line item, each figure in there, in terms of trying to forecast, if you will, what would be an expense in that line item for next year, as well as reviewing contracts, agreements, and also initiatives that we're trying to bring forth into our school district. It's not an easy or non-arduous project. However, it is a very important part of a school district, the business of school, and making sure that the funds that we have available are going to be allocated equally across all of the components of this school district. I'd like to say that when we talk about the legal fees, Mr. Gomez, certainly it's a very important part of the school district in terms of the protection for our entire school district, which is, as we all know, a multi-million-dollar project. So that the legal fees there or any other part of this part of the component of the budget is essential to moving this district forward. And we do decrease wherever it's possible. We scrutinize every penny, so to speak. There have been multiple discussions prior to this evening on the presentation tonight, and that there are some things there that are a forecast, such as, but not limited to, someone asked about the Boces administrative budget. Well, on April 4th, though we have another scheduled item for the budget that evening, the administration team of Boces is coming in to talk about the administrative budget and how they arrived at that. And that varies from year to year from many multiple issues, one of which Mr. Tuttle mentioned, and that was the retirees out of the Boces program, but also their increases necessary for their health program. Those are two escalators to their budget, but not certainly their salaries and their contracts, very similar type of expenses. So they depend on each of the school districts to fund all of the programs. So whatever they're doing there has a direct correlation to that part of the budget, which we do not know at this point in time. So I just like to remind and inform our community that these numbers are not just put up there or an extension of last year's numbers. We scrutinize every dollar on each one of those items. And I cannot iterate that. And we'll get into more detail in the, 57% part of the budget, and that is the instructional. That has a great deal to do with what Mr. Gomez was talking about, the unfunded mandates. Now, we might find some unfunded mandates here and there, but the bulk, the overwhelming majority of the unfunded mandates lie inside that instructional budget, especially around the areas of E&L bilingual students. In terms of the mandates there, we had to, about 2 budgets ago, hire 8 teachers, all right, just to fulfill the latest mandate out of Part 154. All right, and of course, there's always new regulations around special needs students and so on and so forth. The homeless component of the budget that falls inside there is very expensive, especially the busing. We have students that are homeless, traumatic experiences, but just as an example, are residing in the Newburgh School District, but because they left our school district, we're sending buses there to pick them up to come here, and they're doing the same thing for a similar type of situation. So something's got to be looked at. Certainly we believe in the children. We don't want to increase or be part of their anxiety or trauma, but some of these things are financially a burden to school districts. And as far as any discussion regarding that, we'll entertain any questions about it. So I appreciate all the diligence of the board to this component and look forward to the presentation on our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Del Moro. Let's go on to our action items this evening. Approval of financial memorandum number 16, which we had on board docs for a whole week. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Perino. I noticed on the financial that there was some tax certiorari's, and I think when I added it up, it roughly came to about $163,000. Not a great deal of money when you're talking about a budget, but I just need to reaffirm that that's one of the reasons why we have a reserve fund for tax certiorari's. I believe that in both instances, the rebate goes back to at least 2 prior years. So just a point of clarification of a reason for a reserve and that we still have tax certiorari's coming in.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of special service memorandum number 15. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next action item, approval of Assistant Superintendent for instructions contract as presented.
Second.
We've had discussion on this. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Motion to approve the Assistant Superintendent for Administration contract as presented. Mr. Tuttle?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Motion to approve for the proposal for restoration services, Monhegan Middle School. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Any further discussions? We've had a number of discussions on that. I'm sorry? Do you want to say anything about this?
Goodness gracious. The restoration there is in some areas throughout the school there that need, special cleaning, and that we took a very, how should I say, an abundance of caution initiative to take care of the issues that will maintain the appropriate environment in that building, so that that we will continue to keep paramount the safety and welfare of everyone that is in that building, whether they are a staff member working in that building or our precious commodities, the children.
Anything else? See, we've had a first and second on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Action on a student disciplinary appeal. Resolved that the Board of Education upholds a superintendent's decision made at the superintendent's disciplinary hearing regarding student 0210317, following consideration by the Board of Education of the appeal made by the parent and guardians. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
This is executive session material. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Go ahead, discussion.
Yeah, our vote is to uphold the.
Uphold it, yeah. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Second opportunity to address. Anybody?
No words of wisdom.
No.
Thought.
See, committee reports. See, Mrs. Tobiasen,
Yes, Mr. President.
Audit Committee.
Yes. The audit committee met on, I believe it was January 25th.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
At that time,
October 25th.
25th is your minutes. We just met.
Mm-hmm. We want the approval of the Audit Committee meetings of October 25th.
Need an approval for the minutes of October 25th, 2018. They were board docs, so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
And any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. What I wanted to discuss was what we discussed at our last meeting. The audit committee reviewed claims for October 22nd, 29th, November 5th, 12th, 11th, and 26th, December 3rd, December 10th, and December 17th, January 1, January 7th, and January 14th. Again, the audit committee are sent the claims. Maybe not. The audit committee is sent the claims each week. We review them, and if we have questions, we submit them, and they are addressed and answered at our meeting. We also reviewed the treasurer's report for October, November, and December. We had a RFP, a request for proposal, set out for an auditor, for the external auditor. We received 2 proposals, and the audit committee accepted one of the proposals. Mr. Tuttle, do you want to address?
Sure. One of the proposals was from Cooper and Arias. Can you hear? No? Okay. That's the company that we chose. They've been in the district for a few years. They really do a great job with our audit. And it's not just what they do with all the numbers. They actually get very involved and make sure we're using extra classroom activities, funds correctly, and they're really promoting the student piece of it where students should be involved in the accounting and things like that. And their check is when we need to send the audit to the state. So it's not just their audit and then it's final.
Right.
It gets to the board and then it goes up to the state for their review as well. So that's it.
We will be having a special meeting on February 12th to review a copy of the internals auditors. And I do want to make one correction. The meeting was held on Thursday, January 24th. I believe I said January 25th. That's the report for me, Mr. Perino.
Thank you, Mrs. Tobiasen. Roundtable, anything new and compelling?
Motion for adjournment then, Mr. Perino?
Motion to adjournment with a note that the next meeting will be held February 21st. February 21st. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Have a lovely weekend and a presidential long weekend. Thank you. John, very good. We're done.